damning than I or many others had imagined. It is shocking at another level that the White House would release these notes and felt that somehow this would help the president's case or cause. Because what those notes reflect is a classic mafia-like shakedown of a foreign leader. They reflect a Ukrainian president who was desperate for U.S. support, for military support to help that country in a hot war with Putin's Russia, a country that is still occupied by irregular Russian forces and in which people face a very dangerous and continuing and destabilizing action by their aggressive neighbor. And at the same time, a president of the United States who immediately after the Ukraine president expresses the need for further weapons, tells the Ukraine president that he has a favor to ask. The president communicates to his Ukrainian counterpart that the United States has done a lot for Ukraine. We've done an awful lot for Ukraine, more than the Europeans or anyone else has done for Ukraine. But there's not much reciprocity here. This is how a mafia boss talks. What have you done for us? We've done so much for you, but there's not much reciprocity. I have a favor I want to ask you. And what is that favor? Of course, the favor is to investigate his political rival, to investigate the Bidens. And it's clear that the Ukraine president understands exactly what is expected of him and is making every effort to mollify the president. What adds another layer of depravity to this conversation is the fact the President of the United States then invokes the Attorney General of the United States, as well as his personal lawyer, as emissaries, in the case of the Attorney General, as an official head of a U.S. department, the Department of Justice, that he says will be part and parcel of this. Now, I know the Attorney General is denying involvement in this, but nonetheless, you can see why the Department of Justice would want this transcript never to see the light of day. You can see why they have worked so hard to deprive our committee of the whistleblower complaint. And in fact, the opinion by the Justice Department is startling in its own regard, because in that opinion, the Department of Justice advances the absurd claim that the Director of National Intelligence has no responsibility over efforts to prevent foreign interference in our elections. Well, that will come as news, or at least it should, to the Director of National Intelligence, who is charged, among other things, with detecting foreign interference in our elections and with reporting to Congress about foreign interference in our elections. But it is apparently the view of this Justice Department that the Director has no jurisdiction in this area. And it is a sad fact that the Director of National Intelligence would agree to be bound by that view, that the Director of National Intelligence would adopt the view that he had no jurisdiction over an effort to seek foreign interference in our election. That will be the subject of our hearing with the Director tomorrow. What's more, that Department of Justice opinion doesn't even preclude the Director from providing that complaint to our committee, and yet he has withheld it in violation of the law. But the fact that the President of the United States would invoke the Attorney General sends a further message to the Ukrainian president that this is not just me asking, this is not just Rudy Giuliani asking, this is the United States government asking, and we plan to effectuate that through the Department of Justice. Whether those steps have taken place yet or not, or whether those steps have now been prevented by the whistleblower complaint and all that has followed from that revelation. So here we have the President of the United States engaged in a shakedown of a foreign president, a President of the United States, even as he is withholding vital military support to an ally, asking a favor of that ally to investigate his opponent. And just by way of background here, so we know what's at stake, in 1994, we tried to get Ukraine to give up nuclear weapons it inherited from the Soviet Union. They were reluctant to do so because those weapons might be a guarantee against aggression by their neighbor, that is, by the Soviet Union. But we and our allies persuaded the Ukrainians nonetheless to give up those weapons, and we assured Ukraine that we would help guarantee its territorial integrity. Well, Russia would then invade Ukraine, and over the years since that invasion, the United States has provided, albeit not enough, military support to Ukraine. But the most recent support to Ukraine was held up by this president, hundreds of millions of dollars, for reasons that the president would not and the secretaries were not able to communicate even to leaders of their own party, like Mitch McConnell, who said yesterday that he couldn't find out why this aid was being withheld. Well, I think we know why the aid was being withheld, notwithstanding the president's now conflicting explanations. Well, it was because we wanted them to investigate corruption. No, it was because we wanted Europe to give them more money, even though Europe has given them even more than we have. I think we know why the president was withholding that assistance. But regardless, Ukraine understood exactly what was being asked of it. Ukraine understood exactly what they needed from the United States, and that a president of the United States would interfere with our national security, would interfere with the national security of our ally, and do so for the illicit purpose of trying to advance his election campaign, having already sought foreign help in his first presidential campaign, would now abuse the power of his office yet again, this time to seek the help of another nation in his presidential campaign, is the most fundamental betrayal of his oath of office. And I'd be happy to respond to your questions, but one final point about the whistleblower. We still don't have the complaint. Now that we have the Department of Justice opinion, I think it telling that they have released that and yet not released the Inspector General's legal analysis that takes issue with it. This is, again, Bill Barr's Justice Department trying to put out a misleading spin, in this case in the form of the department's opinion. But nevertheless, that complaint needs to be provided to our committee. It needs to be provided in its entirety. That whistleblower needs to be given instructions about how to come to our committee, and that whistleblower needs to be given the complete freedom to report any allegations of wrongdoing that have come to that whistleblower's attention. We will not brook any kind of interference, given how pervasive this cover-up apparently is. Now I'll be happy to answer your questions. Yes.
Can you, the White House says that this call summary proves that there was no quid pro quo because the withheld military aid never even came up in the conversation. What's your response to that?
My response is the president of Ukraine brought up his country's need for military assistance, and immediately thereafter, the president of the United States said, I have a favor I want to ask of you, and would not let the subject go. There was only one message that that president of Ukraine got from that call, and that was, this is what I need. I know what you need. Like any mafia boss, the president didn't need to say, that's a nice country you have. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, because that was clear from the conversation. There is no quid pro quo necessary to betray your country or your oath of office, even though many read this as a quid pro quo. I'm not concerned whether it is a quid pro quo or not. Ukraine understood what this president wanted. He made it abundantly clear. He made it redundantly clear. He had his emissaries making it clear. And Ukraine knew what it needed to do if it wanted to get military assistance, and that is help the President of the United States violate his oath of office.
So what specifically do you see as the impeachable offense here?
Well, I think in its most naked form, and this is what our inquiry is going to look into, the President has now admitted the notes of this call, and we don't even know if these are the complete notes of that call, indicate the President of the United States shaking down a foreign leader, essentially undermining the national security of this country for a personal political gain, and one that violates his oath of office. So it is very powerful evidence of that kind of potential impeachable offense But we want to get the full facts before the American people, and we also want to make sure we take corrective action. And I want to thank the whistleblower. We still don't know whether this is the subject of the whistleblower's complaint, but I think this single courageous individual may have had the effect of forcing the White House to provide Ukraine with this funding, knowing that these matters were going to come to light. But this whistleblower has already had a tremendous impact in exposing wrongdoing of the President of the United States and helping protect our national security in a way that his or her boss was unwilling to do. And by that, I mean the director as well as the President of the United States.
You have resisted calls for impeachment for some time. Yesterday, you came out in support of what the Speaker announced. After seeing what you saw in this transcript, is there any doubt in your mind that House Democrats will move to impeach this president?
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. I think what we have learned, what has been admitted, and now what we see in writing is about as damning as you can imagine. It will be a decision for us when we conclude our investigative work whether to bring this or other matters in the form of articles to a vote. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But no one should have any illusions about the seriousness of what is already uncontested, and that is the President of the United States has betrayed his oath of office and sacrificed our national security in doing so. And that, I think, is quintessentially what the framers were concerned about. I think it's quintessentially what the framers thought was the sum and substance of what might warrant a president's removal from office. So I don't want to understate the significance of what's already been revealed, but I also don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.